I'm an author John Coassie. I've written quite a few books, but mostly about art and culture and set in Michigan, whether they're historical, cultural, or fiction. So mainly my main theme is books about this area or the state of Michigan. And I wrote a lot on Hemingway. I'm on the board of the Michigan Hemingway Society, so I've done a lot of work on Hemingway in Michigan, northern Michigan, especially during the summer. So, and these books here about Hemingway. Let's see. I've got two books here that are in the library. That's why they invited me, so I'm happy with that. One is about the 22nd Michigan in the Civil War that trained in Pontiac and went off to war. So again, it's got local connections to the broader Civil War. Toast of the Town is a memoir that I did that won an award from the Historical Society Michigan Award of 1998 that dealt with black businessman about Hastings Street, Joe Louis, and all that. So there's quite a few things. And then from the stories and the history that are historical stories based upon actual stories of Detroit labor and things like that. The newest one is the Radio Tower, which is set in the late 70s in this area, about the struggles of coming up in that confusing time as a youth. So, well, it's about it. There's a big variety here. So, and then I have an online bookstore that I established. So I'm busy, and it's good to be out because most of the time I'm working and I'm reading and researching, and it's good to be among people and meet other people. So I appreciate being invited. About over 20 years. I came to it late because I played music for a long time. Then I went to Wayne and got my master's degree in history. So I met lots of people while I was doing that. That's why I wrote the memoir about Mr. Sonny Wilson, because some of the people that was in graduate school introduced me to still people living, luckily, that were here in the 30s and 40s and made their mark early. So that was an important book. It's his story. I wrote it for him, so I'm really happy to have done it. He passed away not long after. So yeah, now I'm into it like pretty much full time. So I just read all the time and keep on learning and try to share it with people.
After an entire career in environmental policy and communications, I decided to write a novel called The Best Part of Us. It's a family-based story about the Great Lakes and about their deep connection to an island on an inland lake near Lake Huron, and what happens when their best of intentions become the worst of outcomes. And it's a nature-based story. You are deeply entrenched in the nature that they love and what happens if they actually get back to their island. I've been writing my whole life. I graduated with a journalism degree, and so I was a reporter for several years, and then went back to graduate school at University of Michigan for environmental policy and communications, and then took a Stanford program for fiction writing. So it was a big jump into fiction writing when I was in my late 50s, but very worth it. Oh, it's wonderful. It's the first time that the library has done a local author fair, and judging by all of the great books around here, we have a lot of wonderful writers in the community.
I'm excited to be at the Bloomfield Library sharing educational books that I've authored. The first one is Ryan's Magical Shoes. It's a lovely children's book about learning about diversity and acceptance. And Ryan gets a pair of shoes and he travels all over the world and he meets people that look and sound different than him, and he values their differences and he honors it and he finds similarities. I also have a book about my family's experience in the Holocaust called 4,456 Miles, A Survivor's Search for Closure. It's about my mother's testimony in the ghetto and 3 concentration camps, us going back to Poland, putting up a tombstone for her family, and meeting her liberator. And I also have a book about laughing while learning. It's an educational book for teachers, and it provides some great resources on how to implement humor into your everyday curriculum. Thank you, and Lisa wants to share as well.
And so my name is Lisa Sherbell, Lori and I have co-authored this book. It's called Speech Tips with Spunky Monkey. And it's a great story about our little hero monkey who goes throughout the zoo and shares some tips with his friends who are having some speech challenges. He shows them kindness and understanding and includes everybody in a game he wants to play. And we're happy to share this book with everyone.
I'm a resident of the Bloomfield Township for years. And I used to belong to the creative writing class at night for years, and wrote quite a few short stories. And later, I switched to the memoir class during the day. So I've been writing. Then I started to write some memoir. So my book is titled Water Lilies. It includes 3 parts. My memoirs and poetry and short stories. I have been interested in writing ever since I was a child, and I was often considered to be a good writer in my class. And later on, after I came to the U.S., I also get my master's degree in English literature. So I kept on writing for years. This is my first book, but I think I will continue write later on whenever I have time. Those pictures were painted by my husband, who is an artist and architect. And this one is about the story about the green beans that I painted when I was in elementary school, a story about that. That one is my grandmother's feet. And she has the small bonded feet, which I was very, very curious about when I was a child. So every time she washed her feet, I always went to her room to see it and ask her the question, why do your feet look like this?
I'm the author of Dear Dumb Diary and Catwad and lots and lots of books. I have a new book coming out with DC called Ernest Fan Batman Squad. I've been writing books since I was in elementary school, like little ones. The first book I ever did was called Dealing with the Idiots in Your Life. And then I did a series called It's Happy Bunny, which was a pretty big licensing series. After that, Dear Dumb Diary, Catwad, then there's Jop and Blip, Comet, tons of books. Dear Dumb Diary wasn't a movie. We did this with Jerry Zucker, and it was tremendous fun to do. The actresses were great. Local libraries are tremendously important. It's where I spent a lot of time as a kid in Baldwin Library and also school libraries, because you can get everything for free. Yeah, the people at DC came to me to write a humor category, and they said, well, you can pick any character you want. And I said, Batman, because that's what I knew as a kid. And they said, well, Jim, we have hundreds you can choose from. It's Batman or I'm not doing it. So I got to do a Batman comic. Years ago, I got to work with Adam West, because I had a TV show on Fox Kids, and we got to cast him as a voice. So I've been around the block twice with Batman now, and it's a lot of fun. It was a TV show called The Secret Files of the Spy Dogs, and we had Mickey Dolenz was a voice, Adam West was a voice, a lot of people that you hear in your cartoons like Billy West, and a lot of fun.
I've been writing about the strange and unusual since around 2009 when I got involved in ghost hunting. I quickly realized that I was more scared of the living than the dead when I was going around into people's homes and doing paranormal investigation. What I fell in love with was looking at why something becomes haunted, or folklore, where it comes from, all that kind of cool stuff that comes along with the supernatural realm. And of course, in Michigan, we have all kinds of awesome stories. And as I started digging and looking into the reason why something was haunted, or a piece of folklore from a local, part of Michigan, I would find all of these stories in newspapers and other databases that I was going through that were just kind of lost and forgotten. And I started collecting those and putting them into books. So that's where my books come into play. My first one was Ghosts and Legends of Michigan's West Coast. I'm originally from the west side of the state, Grand Haven, Michigan. And then going through old newspapers, I would find stuff like articles that would say, argument over cows ends in death. Like, let's keep that one over here. And then I eventually had enough of those weird, forgotten pieces of true crime that I put into two of my books, Wicked Grand Rapids and Wicked Ottawa County. And then just recently, during the pandemic, I realized I need a project while I'm stuck in the basement doing nothing. And so I put together Mysterious Michigan, which features a lot of stories I've been collecting throughout the years. And it looks at how the supernatural has played a part in Michigan's history. And just all the quirkiness that can come along with that. So that's me in a nutshell. I think it's great to support your local authors, give them a place to share their work and their ideas and their books with people. So I love when libraries embrace all the writers in their community.
I am a children's author, but I'm a children's book author, but I'm also an attorney by trade. And I have 3 children of my own, and when I was looking around for stories that really touched on like moral and ethical traits and values, I didn't see much in the market. And so I decided that, you know what, let me just write a couple stories for my kids, and they resonated with them and with their fellow friends. And so then I said, well, you know what, let me start with 1 book. And then it turned into 10. And so here are my books. And they go from everything to Adam Never Gives Up, to Sarah Makes a Prayer, to another book saying Sarah Tells the Truth. And so basically what it is, it's a combination of stories, 5 with boy and 5 with girls, and it is focused on emphasizing the values and principles of integrity, of honesty, of kindness, of humanity in general, and it's in very easy to understand English for all young readers to read on their own or be read to. So that is my book series. It's called the Adam and Sarah series. It does have a spiritual religious backdrop to it. And so there are mentions of God and so forth in the books. However, for the most part, it is universally compliant with most people that read and value those integrable things. So those are my books. I've been writing in general for the majority of my life in regards to just being an attorney and drafting legal documents. However, with regards to children's books, just a few years. And so I'm basically a new author, but I love it, and I hope to continue on.
My name is Wendell Woods, and I work for my late father's publishing company, Mary Hannah Woods. It was initially the New History of Pontiac Group, and my father, Esmo Woods, produced this book in 1991-92, and Barnes & Noble actually had a signing in different places. This is the first authoritative history of Pontiac. From 1818 to 1950, Esmo Woods was a graduate of Fisk University, then he went to Columbia and got his master's, and he interviewed W.E.B. Du Bois. Eventually he came back to Pontiac to take care of his mother, and he decided to do an authoritative history of the city of Pontiac, and this is the book, and it went through 4 printings, and it has footnotes in it, and it also has a bibliography in it, and it's a well-researched, is probably the most authoritative history of the city of Pontiac, and it should be a model for other cities to do theirs. In addition, Mr. Woods published his second book, was Thunder and Lightning, and it was a book of poetry, and he had an artist rendition, but more importantly, one of his childhood friends, Elvin Jones, did a forward. Elvin Jones played with Miles Davis and John Coltrane. Elvin Jones was from Pontiac, the Jones Brothers. And also my father had, he had an artist draw pictures for the poetry. So over a period of years, my father had written poetry. He decided to put it into a poetry book, and this is the second book, Thunder and Lightning. In addition, he had some other planners and journals, but the 5th book would be The Travels and Adventures of Lillian Dixon. His mother-in-law, who was my grandmother, lived to be 100. She had traveled in the 60s and 61. She was a social worker, and she was in Italy and met the Pope. In 68, she was in Russia, and this documents her life and her travels. He wrote 4 volumes on her, and she was born in 1909 and died 100 years later. And these are from her travel notes and her pictures. And this is actually her passport, one of her passports. So Dad, my father, had he interviewed her and he took the information from her travel logs to create one of the volumes about her. And here's a picture of her I think in Italy. And there's another picture. Here she is in Italy when she met the Pope. She traveled as a social worker and she was a manager, and my mother got into social work because of her. And he also has, in each chapter, my father has multiple choice or short answer questions. So it's like a workbook, and here's her picture, Lillian Jones from Alabama, who lived to be 100, okay? And additionally, my father did a picture of his own life. He grew up in Pontiac. He was the first class president of Pontiac Central High School. He graduated in 51. Like I said, went on to Fisk and graduated in Fisk in 55 and graduated from Columbia, Ivy League in 58. And so here are the pictures of his life and his achievements, and he was honored by Bob Carr, U.S. Congressman Bob Carr. He was also honored by the state of Michigan, Charlie Harrison. So he's received a lot of honors, and also the Fisk University Alumni Association gave him an award. So he's got a plethora of awards from the county, Oakland County, all the way up to the federal government from the House of Representatives. And additionally, he was a member of Phi Alpha fraternity, but more importantly, he saw himself as a community servant, and he also wrote for the Detroit Free Press as a guest writer. He wrote for the Oakland Press, and he wrote for the Pontiac Press as a guest writer. In addition, he was a hospital administrator. He retired from Pontiac General Hospital, and after that, that's when he started doing continuing doing his work in publishing. And his first company was the New History of Pontiac Group, which published this book and this book. And then his second company was Mary Hannah Publishing, which published this book and 3 other books. And he also made planners for schools. His books were adopted in Pontiac schools, Detroit schools, Flint, and also he had a vendor number in Chicago. And I'm going to expand it and try and get into Tennessee, New York, and other states because his books fit the curriculum for student achievement in grades 5 through 10. So that's it pretty much for my father, Esmo Woods, who died last year, and myself. I'm Wendell Woods, the son, taking over the company, Mary Hannah Woods.
I am a contemporary romance and romantic comedy author, and I've been writing for about 2 years now. I am a native Michigander, and I started writing because I started reading more. And I love the way that a book can take you from wherever you are, from whatever you're thinking, whatever your circumstances are, and transport you somewhere else. It can transport you geographically, it can transport you romantically, it can transport you situationally. And so as I was reading through the pandemic, which many of you probably were as well, I found that I had a voice, I had something to say, and I decided that I would write my first book called The Perfect Voice. I do have a history with voice. I am a musician by trade, and so our heroine in this book, her name is Ruby, and Ruby is struggling as a 27-year-old trying to figure out where her voice is in the world. She's gone to school for music, but she's also a marketing specialist, and unfortunately, sorry guys, she's had her ideas stolen by men and then fired because then they couldn't afford to keep her. So she is struggling, and she decided to put her voice literally to good use. So what we're going to do is Ruby decides to put her application out into the world, and she gets called in for what's called a cattle call. That's where everybody shows up. You wait your turn. If they call your name, you audition. And of course, she's waiting all day and she's falling apart and everything. And she's the last one in the door. And of course, that's where she finds our hero, our fantastic Daniel. And Daniel is a business executive who's trying to rise to the top as well. So they're well, let's just say that their relationship turns a little steamy and the recording booth becomes maybe an escape for both of them sometimes. So their story takes off and each one of them tries to find their own voice in their own world. This book is a standalone, The Perfect Voice, but I wanted to continue this series with her friend who's also in the book, and her name is Trudy, and she gets 2 books. She's getting The Perfect Lessons, and currently right now I'm writing the conclusion, the cliffhanger to this story called Making Perfect Sense. Now Trudy has some childhood traumas, like we all have childhood traumas. Hers has to do with her dad, who is a catastrophic insurance agent, and he gets ripped from his house to go and take care of hurricanes and tornadoes and could be gone for a long time. So she is just torn emotionally with that, and so is the family. So when she graduates as an English teacher, she's a middle school English teacher, she decides she's going to go to some psychology conferences and figure out her stuff. And that's where she meets her heroine, Dr. Alexander Pierce. And let me tell you, this guy is cocky. He is sure of himself, and he thinks that nobody else can live up to his amazing life and what he's accomplished. Well, let me tell you, Trudy's not standing for it. She has a voice too, and she's not afraid to use it. Except she just broke up with Sam. And Sam's been kind of a vanilla kind of guy for her, and she wanted something a little more colorful. And Dr. Alexander Pierce is just the guy to do it. When we're finished with this book, we go to Making Perfect Sense, which has a purple cover very similar to this one. And then I finish up with Socially Satisfied. Actually, Socially Satisfied is a standalone novella. Now I decided, you know what, not everybody has time for a whole novel, a whole 97,000 words. So this is a great weekend read. Take it on a beach holiday. Lock yourself in your room and tell your family you're busy. But this happens to be kind of a fantasy social media kind of setting where Ella is an ER nurse in Wisconsin, and she thinks, wouldn't it be cool to contact one of these up-and-coming celebrities that she likes to follow? And she chose Victor Soloff. And Victor is also feeling the pain and the difficulty of trying to have a real conversation with anyone because he is a star. So they find each other on kind of an off-brand social media, and their relationship takes off, going from talking or texting to talking to video chatting. And then they get together in California, and the story takes off from there. Oh my gosh, this event is fantastic. I'm looking around the room and I'm seeing all these fabulous people doing the same thing that I'm doing. They want to say something, want to teach something, they want to give an opportunity for their community and the world to know what it is to write a book.
I write thrillers, thrill novels, and my book, The Sinful, is just released this year. It takes place here in Detroit, and my main character is Leroy Cutter, a former Detroit police officer, now a private eye, scratching his way through the streets of Detroit. And just when he thinks he won't get beyond the Detroit River, he takes on the case of a missing heiress from a wealthy Detroit family for the easy money. But soon things go into chaos, and nothing as easy as it seems. So check it out. It's on Amazon, debuted at number 10 on Amazon. And it's the first book in a series of 5 right now. You know, anybody who's a fan of Cosby, S.A. Cosby, I need to clarify that, Mosley, or even Connolly or Patterson would be the right audience for this. You know, people who love thrillers, mysteries, crime fiction. I started writing in college. It never dawned on me that it was actually something to do for a living. I worked in television for about 20 years, and once my contract is up and I was tired of the hustle and the bustle of television, never being home, I decided that I was going to go back to what I love, and that is writing. So I've been writing full-time now, probably about 10 years now.
My book, A Divine Accident, is a memoir. I'm a Hollywood baby, I came from California and went through years of Hollywood, movies, etc. And because of some bad things that have happened, I wrote about it to help people who've been through some bad things and to help heal. And my book is about healing and addictions. And the best thing I can say, I live by this parchment. It has to do with happiness and how we choose happiness. Begin today to choose happiness. When you open your eyes in the morning, say to yourself, divine order takes charge of my life today and every day. All things work together for me for good. This is a new and wonderful day for me. There will never be another day like this one. This is a book about a divine accident. One of my divine accidents was being electrocuted at 8 years old, where I and this wire, were one. I couldn't let go of the wire. I kept yelling to the little kids there, please pull the plug, but finally the plug was pulled, but I had electricity go through my whole body. Since then, I can kind of start watches. It's kind of interesting and been able to do some wonderful things.
I am an author of a nonfiction book entitled Broken for Battle. Broken for Battle is a true life story of a little girl that suffered childhood trauma, and it is her journey to find purpose through brokenness. Broken for Battle was written January 2020. I began this journey of writing this book. This has been an incredible journey. In fact, there is a chapter in the book dedicated to a son that I gave up for adoption at birth. There was a young lady that read my book, and she committed to finding my son that was adopted at birth. And if you pan over here to this picture here, this is my son that was adopted at birth. And we have been reconnected. I haven't physically met him in person, but we have talked on the phone, we FaceTime, and so I'm so excited about the journey of actually being broken for battle. I'm really excited about being here today at the Bloomfield Township Library for their first author fair, and this is just exciting and this is incredible.
The book actually chronicles the life of my good friend right here, Tom Daniels, and my life, and how we met and how we collaborated on this book. And he's become my other brother from another mother.
The book is meant to show that despite differences, Cookie here grew up on the west side of Detroit. I grew up on the east side of Detroit. And despite differences in education and other activities, we found each other and realized that parallel lives do intersect if you get to know each other. We have found over the past, now it's going on 6 years that the book has been in existence, that it touches almost anyone, from a 90-year-old Jewish woman all the way through college students. And we also have presented at various high schools in the area. So there's something for everybody. There is sociology, there is history, and a lot of people don't know what used to happen before the civil rights movement. And so it's also educational for everyone.
I have several different kinds here. Let me start over here. This one, The Man from Burnt Island, it's based on a true story, based on the life of my grandfather. He was an immigrant. He came to Detroit 3 weeks before the Great Depression hit. Anyway, that's my latest. It's a labor of love. Took me 2 years to research, because he was a crafty kind of guy. Like, for instance, when he enlisted for World War I, he lied about his age and his name, so it took me a long time to find him. This one, Postcards from the Future, is an anthology of 3 stories about the end of humanity, written by 3 different people. It actually is first place in the Insuperior Awards. People have said it's very, very intriguing. The three stories are very different, but they have a common thread. Over here, I have the third order. I call this a beach read. It's like a Dan Brown-like cat and mouse, shadowy, religious cult that's rogue. A woman who gets caught into the intrigue. Anyway, beach read, entirely different from anything else. This one is an autobiography, a memoir. My son asked me to write it, which is the first book I wrote, and it was so fun, I wrote the rest. And then I have this last one, which is a children's book, written in honor of my grandson, my first grandson, who's got a golden retriever. It's about a boy who really wants a dog. Since 2016, this type of writing. However, I realized that I wrote through my whole career for presentations, for procedure manuals. I actually had a literary agent when I was 20 because I was a navigator on a freighter. Anyway, he was not a very cool character and I dropped him. But so it was a long time coming.
I'm an author of 12 books currently, working on another series. My books are romance with a little dash of naughty, and hopefully great stories and wonderful characters that are relatable. I've been writing since 2013 and I hope to keep going and appreciate the support. I always enjoy being able to connect with people that are potentially my readers and maybe convince people who aren't really into romance to try it. There are a lot of great stories. There are a lot of other great authors and wonderful opportunities around. So this is the place where people can come together just to connect. It's not always just about the books, it's really about the community. It's being able to express yourself and to get new ideas and to learn about other things. There's no greater thing in the whole world than being able to expand yourself through reading.
Libraries are all about discoverability, right? I think you can have a serendipitous encounter with a book at a library that is very hard to have if you're just browsing online or looking through a stack of books. We can really help authors, have a voice in their community and be that place where someone says, "Hey, my friend wrote a book," or "My husband wrote a book," or "My daughter wrote a book." You can get it at the library, so it's a great starting point for people, especially local authors. Look for an upcoming repeat, hopefully later this year.